The gentleman brought up a point about housing. I'd just like to say that in the 1970s we had much more higher rates of housing ownership, and housing wasn't much of a problem as it is back then. Back then we had one home for every 3 people. Now we have one home for every 2.25 people, roughly. And housing's clearly much more bigger than it is now than it was then. So it might not be the sole problem. I agree, if we have more people coming in and we don't build balanced stock, that clearly is a problem. However, clearly given that we have more houses per capita now, problems clearly around distribution, home ownership, the fact that the private sector owns much more houses than social housing for British people, I think that's the main problems that we have.
Yeah, so it's really simple. You cannot address one of the number one problems in Britain. It's not the cost of living crisis, it's a cost of housing crisis.
Yeah.
You can't blame that solely on immigration.
Yes.
The right-wing conservative position is not to blame it solely on immigration.
Yeah.
There are so many multiple, nuanced, multi-layered, multifaceted factors. Like, for example, for ease of conversation with the audience, if a bunch of really rich people own a load of property in places like London, and there's huge demand because essentially they move out, and there's huge demand, then the price goes up and up and up. So we find
the sort of gentrification of areas, where foreign earnings are being moved out.
yeah, sure, that's the hipster stuff,
Yeah.
all of that other socialist, Marxist rubbish.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, hang on, socialist Marx, but you do agree with it?
Yeah, sure, but we're seeing it from the same song sheet. So for everyone else, the conservative position for all those people that scream racist, the housing crisis is not a cost of living crisis, it's a cost of housing crisis, and immigration is one out of many factors.
Yes, but however, having stated that we have more housing per capita than we did in the 1970s, it wasn't much of an issue back then. Therefore, immigration clearly isn't the main issue. It is an issue, but it isn't the main issue regarding housing. Considering that the distribution is much poorer than it was back then. Thatcher, under the right of policy, sold millions of social housing, which means that British people, working class British people, cannot get on the housing ladder, cannot rent housing. Whereas back in the 1970s, before Thatcher came in, British people could rent social housing, now they can't. Now the private sector massively skewed, thanks to the Conservatives back in 2009, I think it was, reducing stamp duty benefits.
Sure, but so brother, we've already established it's multifaceted, right? So let's just say there's...
Immigration is the main problem, I disagree with that.
Sorry, bear with me 1 second. Let's just say there are 10 problems. You would rank immigration, in terms of one being the most important, you would rank immigration as what, 7?
Roughly, yeah.
Right, cool. I would rank it much higher, but can we agree?
But not on first, can we agree on that?
No, but again, for brevity, because I said last question, so we're singing from the same song sheet, right? My point goes back to when I was speaking to the brother. If one person is raped or killed as a result of someone who came here illegally, that needs to be addressed.
I agree, but why are the raped or killed in housing ownership? We're talking about two different things there.
So this is the problem. If you'd have given me just 1 second more, is it anxiety? I don't know what it is, but if you let me speak,
carry on.
jump between the millennials and the Zeds is painful. It's like, it's got to be like...
I agree.
Right, cool. So, number 1, close the borders, begin mass deportations. If you've come here illegally, the bill to house these people in our hotels is 2 billion. But to the left, this 2 billion just comes from nowhere. Out of work migrants are on 21 billion a year in Britain. 23 billion on people who are on visas or who came here via small boat. So as soon as we sort these problems out, there will be massive knock-on effects to the economy. Now, the other issue is social housing. 78% of Somalis are in social housing. I find this unacceptable. 52% of Pakistanis are in social housing. I find this unacceptable. 48% of Bangladeshis are in social housing.
Is that even if they're British citizens?
Yeah, of course.
Even if they're British citizens?
Yeah, fine. So when we go for the 1 to 10, and the gentleman's like 1 and you're like 7, we're actually talking common sense. If we just take the hatred of the weaponisation out of it, open borders, housing, what the left call refugees, what we call invaders, spending money on out-of-work migrants, all of this, absolute nonsense. And lastly, sorry, not to forget social housing. Social housing, change all that, knock-on effects.
Yeah.
Let's start with that.
Yes.
Ask a question. You said we have more houses than we did prior. So are you trying to say because we have more houses, that means we need to import 10 million Somalis.
No, that's
come
not
and live
what I'm saying. But if we have more houses per capita now, clearly immigration is not the problem why we don't have houses.
But I think the
It's
point that
clearly
we're trying to
inequality.
make is that even if we do have houses, those houses should be prioritised for British citizens.
Yes,
Whether
I
it's
agree.
people like me, or it's people like him, people who are born, raised and educated here, and it shouldn't go to people who have absolutely nothing to contribute.
Yes, but what I disagree with is why we're focusing much part of the issue around housing on that issue, and clearly the main issue. When we have 2.25 houses, people per house now, rather than 3 people per house back in the 1970s. So clearly is the main issue. The main issue is that we have allowed the accumulation of assets of housing in the top 1%. That is the main issue, since we have more houses now per capita. It clearly means that the number of people isn't the main issue. Rather, it's the accumulation of where those houses are.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Do you agree on that?
I have no comment on that. I'm very
Okay.
excited.
You
Thank you
got
very
it.
much.
Right.